Setting up the press for stones. So the plate, or the stones, have a separate setup than the plates do. So the first thing that I need to do is clean the press bed and the tympan, which is, as we know, the piece of plastic that goes on top of the stone while we're printing, or the plate when you're printing. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of free of grease, make sure there's no grease on the side that's going to be face down on my stone. The presses are designed for stones specifically, so we don't have to put anything underneath of the stone to bring the bed height up like we had to with the plates. But I do need to make sure some of the same things are happening. So I want to make sure that this is centered on the bed. I have a really small stone here, so the stone might want to move around, but I'll address that in a minute. So choose a scraper bar that is larger than your paper but smaller than the stone. It is really important here that we do not start the scraper bar off the stone or let it ride off of the edge of the stone while we're running it through the press. So first off, let's center it here on the bed. Because it's a small stone, I need to back it with some other stones so that it doesn't slide around during my printing process and change my registration marks with the bed. So I need a stone that is lower than the stone that I'm using to print from. So you can see that that one was a couple inches or an inch lower so that the tympan doesn't sit on that other one, and so that we don't run into any complications when printing. So now I need to put the scraper bar in its housing, lefty-loosey to back up that screw, center that thing on the scraper bar, and then righty-tighty to tighten that up and really secure it in there so it's not going to move around. Showing you here, this press is disengaged when the lever is down and engaged when the lever is up. So you can see I'm like pushing that down or pulling that up based off of what I need the press to do. So it's disengaged now, so I can pull that back freely. And I'm once again making sure that the scraper bar is going to ride over top of the stone this whole time. So I need to set my start and stop marks. So what I'm doing is I'm lining up the scraper bar over the stone when it gets just over top of where my paper starts. Then I'm going to put a piece of tape on the press bed that's lined up with the frame there. You can see what I'm lining it up with. Then I'm going to crank this forward to my second mark, which is my stop mark, which is going to stop just after I get past the paper edge. I do not want to go off the stone. This is how a stone can fly off the press bed, or it'll kick it up in the air and slam it down. I'm putting a little arrow there so I know that I'm lining this up with the front edge of the tape every time. And now I can set my pressure. So I'm using 4 sheets of newsprint to simulate the thickness of the actual printing paper. I'm going to put that down, then I'm going to put my tympan on top, and I'm going to crank the press bed up, or if it's disengaged, I can slide it up and re-engage the bed, up to my first registration mark. My scraper bar should be up higher than I want it to start here. And then I can tighten the pressure down slowly. So I'm starting with it too high. I'm bringing down the scraper bar. It's not touching the stone at all, so I need to crank it all the way down until it's really snug. I don't want to overdo this by hand. Then I'm slowly lightening up the pressure. Here I'm turning it about a half turn, pulling it down. It's still too light, and then I'm just doing little baby turns in between here to make sure that the pressure is nice and snug. I shouldn't have to dangle from the bar. It should just feel pretty snug and pretty tight so that there's some resistance when I pull it down with one arm. I can always tighten up the pressure as I print, but I don't want to go too tight to start because I do run the risk of cracking a stone. So the next video is printing the litho stones.